For more on the strikes, let's bring in NBC's Pentagon correspondent, Courtney Kube. Courtney, you've been following along with Peter on this story all morning. Talk to us about the U.S. interests and personnel in the region right now. We'd obviously seen a series of these strikes off the coast of Venezuela, on boats, in the water. It's very different to go into the capital city.
Absolutely. Entirely different. Now, this is all part of Operation Southern Spear, these attacks or these strikes on these alleged drug boats. Operation Southern Spear was actually announced in November, but the strikes on the boats go back to early September. We've seen more than 30 of them, as Julie just mentioned. And as part of this operation there, the U.S. has poured thousands of additional troops and assets into the region in recent months. More than 15,000 U.S. troops. There's a carrier strike group there, the largest U.S. aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy, the Gerald R. Ford, as well as the associated ships with it. The U.S. has sent in dozens of fighter aircraft as well as logistics support to the region. Now, that is the conventional component or that the U.S. has essentially built up there in recent months. What we have seen in literally just the past few days or maybe a couple of weeks is the increase or the addition of special operations forces as well to that. And that's likely what took part in this operation last night. Now, notably, the president has talked about these as strikes against Venezuela. That could be because they were not necessarily all airstrikes that were involved in there. As part of this buildup, the U.S. has ships off the coast that have the ability to launch Tomahawk missiles. TLAMs. We've seen that in recent conflicts in recent years in Syria, in Libya, and other places. That gives the U.S. military the ability to strike a precise location with standoff capabilities. So that essentially means that they are far enough back that it doesn't present a threat or as big of a threat to the military forces who are carrying out that strike. But what we also saw overnight was clearly helicopters in the air over Caracas. Now, we don't have specific information about what those were. What they look like from the video are Chinooks and maybe some smaller helicopters there. We do know in recent days, part of that increase of the Special Operations Forces has included the 160th Special Operations, known as the Night Stalkers. You guys may recognize them, that name, because they were involved in taking the U.S. Navy SEALs in for the bin Laden raid in 2011. We know that they have brought some forces into the region. They have something known as a Little Bird. It's a small, very fast attack helicopter. It can fly low to the ground, get in and out of a location, and that may have been one of the things that was used here. These are the kinds of questions that we're hoping to get more answers to. But it's not just the aircraft that we saw. The U.S. military clearly took these strikes. So the types of locations that are starting to come to light now is some Venezuelan military targets in and around Caracas. The reason for that, we know from the tweet from Senator Mike Lee that this was to protect the personnel who are going in on the ground to take Nicolas Maduro and his wife into custody. But what they may have been targeting in a normal military operation would be going after any possible air defenses or any possible Venezuelan military who may respond and put the military on, and the U.S. officials there on the ground in any danger during this operation. These are all the kinds of details that we hope to get hopefully today at 11, if not in the coming hours and days, guys.
All right, Courtney Kube, appreciate your expertise here.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC or take Today when you're on the go. Just follow the Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.